Hello, and welcome to a new series from Digital to D&D. A series where some random guy on the internet tries to take a character from fiction and attempts to turn them into a usable stat block for you to use in your games of Dungeons & Dragons. Each episode of this series will be broken down into the following sections. The character introduction, where I attempt to explain the background of the character. The feature breakdown, where I point out what aspect of the character I'll be attempting to convert. The stat block, where I show off the monster sheet and explain how it works and how to use it. And finally the quest duct, where I explain the possible uses for the character in your games of D&D. Naturally, any character that features in this series belongs to their respective owners. With that out of the way, however, let's begin with our first character, Senator Steven Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Making the mother of all omelets here, Jack. Cast bread over every egg. Why won't you die? You can't hurt me.
Senator Steven Armstrong is the primary antagonist of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and is one of my favourite boss fights in gaming, with an amazing boss theme. Armstrong was a United States Senator representing the state of Colorado, and the primary benefactor of the private military company World Marshal. We first learn of Armstrong early on in the game, where we learn that he's ordering the kidnapping and experimentation of children to turn them into cyborg soldiers, to further his personal goal of becoming President of the United States by starting a war with Pakistan by assassinating the current president during peace talks. Throughout the rest of the game, we don't see Armstrong again until the very end of the game, but aspects of Armstrong are hinted through the other antagonists of the game, the Winds of Destruction. Though she does not name him at the time, Mistral speaks of how she was aimless with her life until she met Armstrong, who gave her life new meaning. When we finally meet Armstrong, we see him to be an absolute unit, god damn! We see him talk to Raiden and explain his plan, and how Raiden's attempt to stop him has only pushed the plan further. What plan is that?
They'll make America great again!
Seeing Raiden as the only one who can expose this deception, he pilots Metal Gear Excelsus to try and kill Raiden. After a long but really cool fight, Excelsus is destroyed and Armstrong emerges from the cockpit, where he proceeds to absolutely dunk on Raiden, snapping his blade and showing his power comes from
Nanomachine, son!
These nanomachines allow Armstrong to take any hit and dish it back just as hard, making him near indestructible and letting him stand here. He then proceeds to toss Raiden like a football and punch him so hard he blows up the remnant of Excelsus. Before he can finish Raiden off, Blade Wolf tosses Raiden the blade of Jetstream Sam, who will get their own episode soon enough. With this new blade, both Raiden and Armstrong start their final fight, the two wearing each other out before Raiden gains the upper hand and pulls out Armstrong's heart. Before dying, Armstrong speaks of how soldiers will die for causes they don't believe in, and that Raiden should carve his own path, with his last words exclaiming how their kindred spirits is deep inside. And thus Armstrong dies, but we do get to see a little more of him in the Jetstream Sam's DLC, where he lures Sam in for an interview. Said interview is another fight with him where we learn Armstrong hates Brazilians because goddamn, this fight is so much harder. But with that, we reach the end of the character introduction. If you want to learn more about Armstrong, I strongly advise playing Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance if you haven't already. It's one of the best games I've ever played in my life, and I doubt you'll be disappointed with it. So what can we take away from Armstrong for his sheet? Obviously we need
Nanomachine, son!
in there, but let's break down what they do for him. As Armstrong kindly tells us, his nanomachines make him nearly impervious to damage as they can
harm in response to physical trauma.
So he needs a high armor class and some sort of ability to harden his skin or an outright immunity to traditional attacks. From the encounters we have with him, Armstrong shows off incredible strength and constitution, making him the idol of a lot of barbarian players. His strength is incredible as he tosses Raiden like an American football, and as I mentioned before, punched Raiden so hard he blows up Excelsus. Not to mention he then proceeds to throw parts of the mech at Raiden during the boss fight. As for his constitution, even when bloody, bruised and missing his heart, he still keeps standing and talking, even holding on after his own heart is crushed for a few moments. With that in mind, I think some alt barbarian traits might fit him very nicely. Another notable feature is Armstrong's way with words as he climbed the ladder of the American government and swayed the members of the Winds of Destruction, and even Raiden to an extent, to his way of thinking. The man has charisma, you can't deny that. Then again, who needs words when you could punch the ground so hard lava bursts out, or you could draw in electricity and metal around you to heal your wounds? With these traits in mind, let's see what I can come up with. I had a lot of fun making this one, as Armstrong, at least in my eyes, serves as a very high level barbarian boss. In fact, someone should make a subclass out of his abilities. But without any further delay, here is the stat block of Senator Steven Armstrong. Feel free to read it at your own leisure, but I'll now be making my way through the sheet to explain each feature. Starting off, we have his creature type and alignment. Despite his abilities, Armstrong is just a human, and I argue that he's lawful evil. The man has a set code and a belief that he adheres to, but he's also a child-murdering hypocrite. Alignment is tricky, of course, but for now, I'm calling him lawful evil. Thanks to his nanomachines, Armstrong has an armor class of 20, meaning only precise or powerful blows have a chance of hurting him. Partner that with his 335 hit point average, and we have the ultimate tank. Armstrong does move rather quickly in the game, but I elected to keep his movement at 30 as the man loves to swagger towards his opponent, and he has other abilities later on to sort this. Besides, he has plenty of things to keep him mobile. His ability scores are as follows: 25 for strength, 13 for dexterity, 25 for constitution, 16 for intelligence, 14 for wisdom, and 20 for charisma. He also has proficiency in dexterity, constitution, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. As for his skills, Armstrong has a plus 13 to athletics, plus 8 to perception, and plus 11 to persuasion. To reflect his tough nature, Armstrong is immune to any bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. I think it's fair to class Raiden and Sam's blade as magical, and I doubt an actual knife is going to work against him. As a human, Armstrong has no special senses, nor does he demonstrate any, so he just has a passive perception of 18. As for languages, Armstrong only speaks freedom, but since that's not a language in 5e, let's just say he knows Common, but I could believe he knows some other languages. As the final boss of the game, and a tough one at that, Armstrong currently sits at challenge rating 20, making him a great endgame antagonist for a mid-level game. With his stats out of the way, let's talk about traits. Some traits might be interlinked with each other, but for the sake of consistency, I'll be reading through the sheet as it is chronologically. Feral Rage is a trait that allows Armstrong to enhance his Senator's Rage and turn it into a Feral Rage. Whilst in a Feral Rage, Armstrong gains access to new actions and gains immunity to being charmed and frightened. As you might suspect, this is an altered version of the Berserker Barbarian, and like it, this rage also comes with a cost. When his Feral Rage ends, Armstrong has to make a Constitution saving throw, the DC equaling 10 plus the number of rounds he was in the Feral Rage for. If he fails, Armstrong gains a level of exhaustion. This is to balance out the abilities that become available to Armstrong, while still giving players a chance to wear him down. As the final boss, Armstrong gets legendary resistances, which lets him succeed on a saving throw he fails 3 times a day. Let's go take advantage of Armstrong's readiness to fight by granting him advantage on initiative rolls, by letting him bypass the surprise condition by using his Senator's Rage first. Played College Ball is his version of Danger Sense, which gives him advantage on dexterity saving throws if he can see the threat and he isn't blinded, deafened, or incapacitated. What's different about these versions? Have you seen American football? Powerful build lets Armstrong lift gargantuan or smaller targets with relative ease. Like any good barbarian, Armstrong has Reckless to give him an advantage on attacks, as even if a creature somehow hits him, they'll probably not hurt him that much, if at all, so why not ensure that he hits? When Raiden impales Armstrong, he stumbles back a few moments before finding his strength even though he's on death's door. Relentless Spirit lets Armstrong try and keep fighting by rolling a Constitution saving throw to fall to 1 hit point instead of 0 as long as he's not killed outright. The DC starts at 10, which Armstrong can easily do at first, but the DC increases by 5 each time, meaning he will fall eventually. Siege Monster is a classic trait that lets Armstrong deal double damage to objects and structures. His final trait is his innate spellcasting. Now, Armstrong doesn't cast spells, but he's able to cast Long Stride on himself to gain that extra 10-foot movement speed. Armstrong can also cast Jump on himself, which will triple his jump distance. His normal jump distance with a running start is 25 feet horizontally and 10 feet vertically. With the spell active, that becomes 75 feet horizontally and 30 feet vertically, meaning height will not save you from him. Expeditious Retreat lets Armstrong dash as a bonus action whilst he concentrates on it. This spell is meant to help Armstrong deal with enemies who are trying to keep the distance. After all, we all remember a certain meme format. Thaumaturgy is a tricky one, as the only aspect of it that would fit Armstrong would be the voice amplification, and with a sheet this big, it felt easier to just give him the full spell. The final spell is the only one Armstrong has a limit on casting, Wall of Fire. This spell is meant to represent the similar effect that Armstrong demonstrates during the Jetstream Sam DLC, which allows Armstrong to better control the battlefield. An important detail to focus on in regards to Armstrong's spells is that if he has the chance, he will cast Longstrider and Jump on himself beforehand, since neither require concentration and their passive buffs will allow him much more versatility in combat. With his traits out of the way, let's get to the actions. Like any high level creature, Armstrong has a multi-attack that lets him make 2 melee attacks. Given the damage output of a single melee attack, it felt appropriate to make Armstrong a slow but heavy hitter. Armstrong's primary attack is his Slam, which is a melee weapon attack with a plus 13 to hit against one target within 5 feet. If he hits with this attack, which with Reckless he's likely to do, he deals 1d8 plus 7 bludgeoning damage. However, if he's under the effect of his Senator's Rage, which we'll get to in the bonus action section, this damage bonus increases by 4, now dealing 1d8 plus 11 bludgeoning damage on a hit. With a minimum of 12 damage and a maximum of 19, it means each Slam will start to build up quickly. His next action is special, as the Flaming Slam requires Armstrong to be in a Feral Rage to use it. It's identical to the normal Slam, except that it deals an additional 1d8 fire damage on a hit. Why fire, you may ask? I'm not sure what this energy is, but I'm going to call it fire given the other things Armstrong does emits fire as well. To help with ranged threats, and to call back to the amazing moments in the boss fight, Armstrong could throw a rock or similar object at one target having a plus 13 to hit, and a normal range of 60 feet and an extended range of 240 feet. If the attack hits, the target takes 4d10 plus 7 bludgeoning damage. Now we reach the special attacks, which, for Armstrong, he has 2 that fall under the one action Enhanced Burst. Having a recharge roll of 5 or 6, taking this action allows Armstrong to use one of the following burst weapons. Magma Burst requires Armstrong to be in a Feral Rage. If he is, and he uses this burst weapon, Armstrong strikes the ground and causes magma to erupt. In a previous draft, this effect was just a radius centered on Armstrong, but I changed it to make it more unique and target up to 5 creatures on the ground. Failing a DC 21 dexterity saving throw will result in the creature taking 68 bludgeoning damage and 68 fire damage, as well as being knocked prone. If the target succeeds on the saving throw, they take half as much damage and are not knocked prone. The other burst weapon is Thunderburst, which ties into the near primal roar Armstrong lets out during the fights with Raiden when he's thrown into the debris of Excelsis. Thunderous Burst causes Armstrong to let out a blaster sound in a 30-foot radius centered on himself. Creatures within the area have to make a DC 21 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, the creature takes 10d6 thunder damage, is pushed 30 feet away, and is knocked prone. On a success, they take half as much damage and suffer no other effects. This burst also affects objects in the area like the Thunder Wave spell, pushing them away from Armstrong. Next up is the bonus actions, and Armstrong has a few. His first one is Feral Slam, which as the name suggests can only be taken when under the effects of Feral Rage. This bonus action simply allows Armstrong to make one melee attack. Arguably the most important action is the Senator's Rage, Armstrong's versions of a Barbarian's Rage, which he can use 5 times a day. It's fairly similar, except he gains resistance to everything except psychic damage, but unlike a normal Rage, Armstrong can still cast and concentrate on spells. Like a normal Rage, he also has advantage on strength checks to strength saving throws, and gains a +4 bonus to damage rolls with melee attacks. His Rage lasts for 1 minute, but ends early if he's incapacitated or ends it as an action. Armstrong's final bonus action is Standing Here. I played around with putting this in there somewhere, but in the end, I think this works best. As a bonus action, Armstrong gives himself a +1 bonus to his armor class, and any roll he makes to avoid being pushed or knocked prone. This bonus action can stack up to a maximum of +10, giving Armstrong an armor class of 30 if allowed to build up. This bonus comes with a price, however, as Armstrong must stay in his space, and if he moves for any reason or is knocked prone, the bonus is lost and resets to 0. Reactions are up next, and Armstrong has 2 that he can take on top of the normal opportunity attack. Retaliation is only available if Armstrong is in a Feral Rage, but it allows him to make a melee attack against a creature that triggers his Relentless Spirit trait. Those of you who have fought Armstrong know he has a habit of almost looking like he's about to collapse before getting back up for one final attack. Nice Knife is his other reaction and lets him reduce any bludgeoning, piercing or slashing damage he takes by 1d12 plus 7. If he manages to reduce the damage to 0 and the attacker was in 5 feet, he can attempt to knock the weapon out of the attacker's hands, forcing it to make a DC 21 strength or dexterity saving throw. The attacker gets to choose which one it makes. If the attacker fails, they are disarmed and their weapon lands 20 feet behind them. You might ask why, if it's called Nice Knife, he only disarms the opponent instead of breaking the weapon, and it simply came down to not upsetting players. Being disarmed is irksome. Having your weapon ruined is a potential game ruiner. But with that, we come to legendary actions, of which Armstrong can take 3 per round, like the majority of legendary creatures. Come Here is my way of combining 2 attacks Armstrong has. One is the headbutt attack, and the other is the final attacks he uses against both Raiden and Jetstream Slam. With this legendary action, Armstrong charges towards a creature he can see within 30 feet and tries to grab them. The creature has to make a DC 21 strength or dexterity saving throw, and he gets to choose which one it makes, or become grappled by Armstrong. If the creature fails to break the grapple, which has an escape DC of 21 by the end of its turn, it takes 1d8 plus 11 bludgeoning damage, 1d8 plus 7 if Armstrong isn't raging. You can flavour the damage however you want, could be choking them, headbutting them, or punching them. Strike is simple. Armstrong makes 1 melee attack. Enough said. Empowered Charge costs 2 legendary actions to use, and it lets Armstrong charge in a straight line up to 60 feet without provoking opportunity attacks. Any creature in his path has to make a DC 21 dexterity saving throw or take 2d8 plus 11 bludgeoning damage, 2d8 plus 7 if he's raging, and be knocked prone. This lets him zip around the map and keep up the pressure. As the name suggests, throw lets Armstrong throw something. Who would have guessed? Costing 2 legendary actions, Armstrong throws a creature or object he has grappled up to 60 feet in any direction he wants. The thrown target takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage for every 10 feet it is thrown once it lands. If he aims at another creature, the other creature has to make a DC 21 dexterity saving throw or take the same amount of damage and be knocked prone with the thrown creature. The final legendary action, and costing 3 to use, is Harvest Power. Like in the boss fight with Raiden, Armstrong starts to focus on drawing energy around him to heal. Armstrong needs to concentrate on this legendary action as if it were a spell, and if he isn't stopped, he heals 167 hit points. If his concentration broken, Armstrong is stunned until the start of his next turn. A special caveat with this legendary action is that it can only be taken on the turn after whoever is after Armstrong in the initiative order. I had to put this in as without it, Armstrong could theoretically wait until the turn before his own in the initiative order, use this legendary action to start to heal, and then immediately get his health back. At least this way, with this caveat, players have a chance to stop it, like I intended. And with that, we reach the end of the stat block. And what a long one it was. Hopefully you understand how each part works and the inspiration behind it, but with that done, we come to the final section. Now this section is tricky, as I doubt anyone will put Armstrong into the game as he is, as he doesn't really work in the majority of D&D settings, but that doesn't mean he can't be used at all, or aspects of him can't be used in your games. We'll start off with just using the sheet as it is. The simplest method is to rename Armstrong and make him a powerful noble in your setting. Use his vast wealth to infuse his body with magic, which lets him harden his skin into diamonds and create bursts of fire from the ground. If you don't want him to be human, go ahead and change him. He could be a dwarf, dragonborn, a turtle. He doesn't even need to be humanoid, maybe he's a special devil with unique powers. But let's look at what someone like Armstrong could be like in terms of plot hooks. If we go with the noble idea, you could use Armstrong's core beliefs of might makes right to have your noble set up a scheme to gain more power. Maybe they want to become the ruling lord or the king. Maybe they want to tear the government down and supplant it with their own. The political aspect of a character like Armstrong allow for some amazing plot hooks in a game of D&D. Let's say you took just the personality of Armstrong, slap it on a noble stat sheet, and you still have an interesting antagonist for the party. Sure, it won't end with the noble tossing the party around with their bare hands, but the fallout of the actions the noble takes might change the world around the players. Maybe the noble has some points the party agrees with, but they still have to stop them. Think of the stories that might come of if the party start to question their own moral code, or maybe some party members decide to side with the noble because they agree with the philosophy of it. Many people think that a big bad should be a classic monster like a fallen god, a lich, or even a dragon. But with the right narrative, a single regular noble can be a far more compelling foe for the party. But with that, we reach the end of today's video. Before you head off, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you managed to get something out of this. The Senator Armstrong stat block is available on D&D Beyond for free, and the link to it is in the description. If you like this video, please check out some of my other stuff. I hope you all have a great day, and may your dice roll favourably. Goodbye for now.